What you are about to see is a remote viewing session that was conducted totally blind by the remote viewer. The viewer knew nothing about the target or the nature of the project when doing the session. But I will now tell you what the target is so that you can follow along when the remote viewer is describing the session data. Now, the sessions for this target were all completed by Farsight remote viewers in July 2024. The target for this project is the Israeli war with Hezbollah and its aftermath. In June 2024, it looked like a war with Hezbollah was inevitable, so this project was designed to see what such a war would look like. The target has a number of focuses. The first focus is the most advanced weaponry that Israel will use in its upcoming war with Hezbollah, as the weaponry is actually used in combat. Now, the second focus is the most advanced weaponry that Israel possesses of any type. So the first two focuses involve the types of weapons that might be used in such a war. Now, the remainder of the focuses deal with the actual war itself with respect to the use of those weapons. Focus 3 is the scene that would best describe the final outcome of the Israeli war against Hezbollah. Now, Focus 4 is the scene in Israel that would best describe the final outcome of the Israeli war against Hezbollah. And Focus 5 is the scene in Lebanon that would best describe the final outcome of the Israeli war against Hezbollah. So with these focuses, we are hoping to see what the result of the war will be like in various places, such as in Israel, in Lebanon, and possibly elsewhere. Now, I want to make something very clear. Remote viewing data must be considered speculative until they are verified with respect to solid facts on the ground. So, the data that you are about to see can be interpreted one way, but they may turn out to be something else when all is said and done. The best we can do is to say that the remote viewing data are one viewer's attempt to describe what is perceived, all under blind conditions. So, these data which you are about to see cannot be interpreted at the current time as saying that Israel will definitely resort to using, say, nuclear weapons. Indeed, very large conventional weapons can also cause results that look quite similar to nuclear weapons. Such large conventional weapons were in fact used by the United States during the Vietnam War, which resulted in huge craters across much of Vietnam that are now lakes which are often used for fish farming today. A remote viewer might have difficulty differentiating a large conventional weapon from a nuclear weapon during a remote viewing session, since both would be destructive over a large area. And importantly, it could be that we are wrong about everything. Perhaps the war will not happen, or perhaps it may be short-lived. Perhaps diplomacy will win the day and disaster will be averted. The only thing we are saying is that these are the perceptions that our remote viewers perceived when being tasked with the target of the upcoming war between Israel and Hezbollah. All remote viewers at Farsight are very highly trained in the use of our remote viewing procedures, so the data could be important. Now let's see what one of our remote viewers perceived for this target.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Deep News. We have Intysam here today, and just to be clear, Intysam, you do not know the nature of the target?
I have no idea.
All right. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. So how about you start off on page 4 and give us some of your initial target descriptions and just keep flowing through the session.
So initial perception is a irregular topography, that the land is irregular, feels man-made. I was picking up some water, not too extensive. Multiple structures, so this environment feels like a city. So subjects inside the structures and outside. I was picking up 2 dominant mountains in this area. Some foliage, loud voices like talking or blaring sounds, and cold temperatures. So that's just the initial gestalt of the environment.
Okay, great. And that's pretty much what you're seeing as well in your flash sketch.
Yeah, except I added that this environment feels crowded.
Okay, fascinating. Okay, so then you moved on to the center of the target on page 6. What else were you seeing?
I was picking up dim or dark lighting here. Something here feels unusual, like this isn't its natural state. I was sensing the presence of some subjects, like a few. A large rectangular structure And my viewer feeling for this was, it felt like there's something here that I didn't like about this environment. I'm sensing a focused gathering with the subjects, and then I was getting an image of like it looks dark, and I got like a darkish image, and I was wondering if that just, it was alluding to a sense of secrecy going on here. And then I picked up an irregular dark shape on the floor of this room that I deducted blood, and a sense of something in captivity.
Okay, great. And then then you've got your multiple sketches here for focus 1. And then we moved on to look. Well, why don't you just give a little bit of a run through? What were you coming up with when you just got 3 random visuals for focus 1?
The first visual was like a circular table, subject sitting around it with this dark shape on the floor. I mean, it could be a rug now that I think about it, so that's also a deduction. And then like a stuffed bear.
A stuffed bear. That's very high level, but
it's very high level. But there was something that just looked like that. And then I saw more subjects with some nice looking cars. And for the third flash sketch, it was a land-water interface with foliage and structures, tall structures.
Okay, great. So then we moved on to technology 2. So what happened when you moved to technology 2 and described?
So technology 2, I was perceiving a chrome color or a similar type of alloy. It feels dome shaped. I deducted the Nazi Bell UFO. Whatever this is, it felt like dense and full of wrapped wire type objects inside. And it feels really powerful with the ability to change how things are or make giant leaps in tech. It feels like it's partly a communication device, but I deducted that it came out of nowhere, it's too high level, the coming out of nowhere and feeling like there wasn't any similar technology leading to this. But what the underlying thing for that sentence would be that I haven't seen anything like it before.
Okay.
Yeah. It feels like whatever technology this is can interact or function both in the air and water, and it felt like a vehicle of some kind. Looks curved. I was getting 2 visuals actually with this technology 2 thing here. I was getting like a curved, longer than wide type of object that had rotating parts, but I was also getting a like a rectangle type shape with grooves on the edges. So I don't know. I was just seeing both. I kept seeing both. Just decided to draw both.
Okay, great. All right, so it's seems like an unusual technology to say.
Unusual for sure.
Okay. Well, then we moved to the target event for focus 1. So what happened when you started describing that?
So the environment for this target event, it looks like an outdoor environment with lots of subjects. It feels like a focused gathering of some kind, rapid movements by subjects and objects. I started deducting the active denial system because of frequencies. So it feels like a chaotic moment with the subjects, like something incites the subject and violence breaks out, and that it went from a moment of calmness to hysteria. I deducted a swarm of bees, but not actual bees, more like technology for that deduction. And it feels like, I think this comes from this kind of hysteria. It comes from the energetics coming from the non-surface structures or some sort of frequency being emitted. Something in the sky, multiple objects that look like dark objects. They're in a specific flight formation. Continuing, I sense energetics going off at the base surface. So deduction of drones, but the energetics feel like explosive energetics. There's a lot going on. Yeah.
So you wrote something that was linked to the hysteria that... It was like these energetics. Did you mention this already?
Yeah, that something linked to the hysteria. It just feels like energetics coming from some non-surface structures, and it feels like a frequency of sort being emitted.
I remember you said
linked
that.
to that of hysteria. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And then you drew quite a nice sketch here on page 10. Sort of, you see these formation of these non-surface structures and what even kind of looks like shooting downwards. Is that correct?
Yeah, shooting downwards. And then there's more structures than is depicted in the image that I drew. But these non-surface structures shooting down, and I'm seeing this explosive energetics, and I'm seeing this subject in hysteria.
I see. And I guess sort of the sensation of some sort of that frequency helping to incite that hysteria on the base surface.
Yeah, which is why I deducted the active denial system that emits frequencies and targets civil subjects to kind of like incite them, makes them hear voices, makes them feel like they're burning. It's just,
Interesting.
Terrible technology.
Wow. Okay, so then you moved to location A. So what happened when you moved to location A in focus 2 to describe?
So at location A, I was seeing beige structures. They look quite boxy. Location A looks industrial. There's a uniformity with the structures. I deducted a military compound because of the tan colors everywhere. And it feels like I could see subjects in uniform. I was also seeing some bulky type of vehicles. And then I did a little sketch. Yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome. So then you moved to technology 1. So what was technology 1?
Technology 1, I perceived something that's shaped like a helicopter or a dragonfly, which are both deductions, but it's just the shape. But these things, they felt quite small, perhaps the size of an insect. It feels like there are large numbers of these technology 1 objects, and something about this type of tech feels like it's not meant to be seen. So a deduction of like a surveillance type of object. And it also felt robotic or remote controlled in some way. And it gives a lot of power to the one who wields it. So I added a little sketch. They're just like teeny tiny things that are, like I said, shaped like helicopter or dragonfly. It's just the thick, wider front with like a narrower tail. And I also wrote down that these are meant to be disregarded and not paid attention to. And then I was like, satellite capability with these? Yeah.
Okay, fascinating. Okay, so then you moved on to focus 3. So you moved to the location of scene 1 in focus 3. So what happened there?
So scene 1, there's foliage here. It feels somewhat extensive. There's also structures, although not very visible. Some might be below the surface. A lot of subjects inside the structures, and it felt like a high-tech environment. I think I was also perceiving subjects in lab coats, but yeah. Feels like there are mountains in the general area, extensive water, land-water interface, a city in the distance way out. And then when I zoomed out, I was picking up multiple structures that look quite low level, like they're not tall. They seem to look like they're degrading. Feels like there's a pollution of sort across this environment with chemical smelling atmospherics. Moving to the source of the chemical atmospherics, it looks like something fell from the atmosphere or the sky, and also looks like this place just got berated. That there was tall structures. It looks like there was a tall structure that was in this environment, and then later on it just wasn't there. This place looks like it had more structures in general, and then the place got leveled.
Wow. Okay, and then you got a sketch for the before and after. Sort of looks like what was the words that you described there? Well,
before it looked like just, typical urban environment with structures and foliage and stuff like that, and then afterwards it just kind of looks like a shanty. There's pollution in the atmosphere and in the earth. It just it doesn't look the same at all.
Wow. Okay, so then we moved on to location 4. You moved to the location for scene 2 in focus 4. Not location 4, if I said that, I meant focus 4. So focus 4, the
Focus 4.
location for scene 2 in focus 4.
For this scene, seeing a brown base surface looks like it's bare with objects sticking out off of the ground. It almost looks like a mudslide because of this. It's brown, but then there's also a certain texture that you can see on the ground. Excuse me. Some structures here. Also, there's some subjects. Doesn't look extensive or like a city. More of like a town sort of feel. This scene, like the one before, also looked degraded. It looks like this place has had damage, but there's rebuilding going on. It feels more barren, less greenery, but this place did not suffer as much damage as in the scene 1 in focus 3 that we just looked at. I also saw that the subjects here have darker hued skin.
Interesting. Okay, so then let's go to focus 5 and move to the location of scene 3 in focus 5 and describe.
So this feels like an urban environment. The structures are really close together, like they're packed together. The quality of the environment is not good. It smells terrible. Structures here are low level, like they're quite short. But this environment borders an environment with tall structures. However, there's like quite a sharp contrast between the two places. This particular place, it looks like a slum. But looking around, I was also picking up taller structures that look damaged, and they kind of have cracks or pieces blown off of them. And there's a lot of damage here, but less damage the closer you go into the taller structures. So it's kind of like just less damage as you move closer to the tall structures. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so great descriptions, and you have a little sketch there to sort of show what you just described. Great descriptions, great everything. Are you ready to know the nature of the target?
Kind of hesitant, but yeah.
Okay, great.
Give
And
it to
just to
me.
be clear, you do not know the nature of the
I
target
have
yet.
no clue. Feels
Great.
like just what's happening everywhere.
All right, so how about I just jump right in and tell you this was about the Israeli war with Hezbollah and the aftermath. So
Ooh.
here is this.
What are these locations?
Yeah, so we had multiple focuses, 5 focuses, quite a lot of focuses. So the focus 1 was basically the target subject was just the Israeli war with Hezbollah and its aftermath. So focus 1 specifically was just the most advanced weaponry that Israel would use in the upcoming war with Hezbollah, as the weaponry is actually used in combat. And you had a pretty interesting description of this technology, this technological weaponry. We know we always sort of think nukes and everything like that, but you have this description of some sort of technology that emits a disruption frequency that I guess puts people in a constant ultra-triggered state to compromise their decision-making and stuff like that. Because, I mean, the prompt wasn't necessarily what's the most destructive thing. We're just looking for what's the most advanced weaponry. And I guess this would apply as the most advanced weaponry, something that was a bit more covert and had a bit more of a subtle effect at just agitating the entire target victim population. So that's that was very interesting discovery. Your focus 2 thing was really interesting. That was the most advanced weaponry that Israel possesses of any type, and you described these, I guess, insect-sized drones. And then I was very curious, so I decided to go off and try to Google insect-sized drones, and then I found this, I found that there was an article written 5 years ago about the Army developing these mosquito drones, and they were fascinating. They actually have the ability to, they looked just like mosquitoes. Like, I swear, if I just saw one of these things and I would not know it's not a mosquito. I would have slapped it and crushed it, and I would have still thought, oh, that's just the body of a dead mosquito. I really wouldn't have thought that it was a drone. I mean, it's so tiny. And the mosquito drones had the ability to inject people with RFID tracking chips. It had the ability to take blood samples, and it had a little battery on it. I mean, it was very
That's
it was very
crazy.
sophisticated. So I'm not saying that's exactly what you were seeing, but
It
the
was
idea
close.
of yes, it's close enough to make me think that okay, well, if 5 years ago there's an article describing this type of stuff, that means they were probably building these types of things way longer than the past 5 years. And when we think of all these deals where the United States is providing weaponry to Israel and Ukraine and other people, we always usually think like, okay, it's big rockets, big tanks,
Nope.
stuff like that. Probably there's a good bit of this more advanced tiny technology.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of technology gets developed in the midst of war.
Yeah, it definitely. It seems to be that's a big thing that causes a lot of jumps in technological development. Unfortunately, so I mean, it'd be nice to have some sort of peaceful jumps that were stronger. But anyway, for Focus 3, that was basically the scene that would best describe the final outcome of the Israeli war against Hezbollah, and that was a scene that was a bit destructive. I mean, you said that there was pollution basically that mired the entire landscape.
Yeah.
The soil seemed pretty bad. But
Yeah. Okay. Well. So this is Israel that I'm looking at, or where?
oh, so the Focus 3 was, we didn't know exactly where that would be. That was just be the scene that best described the final outcome. Now, Focus
Okay.
4 was a scene in Israel that best described the final outcome of the Israeli war against Hezbollah. So that was Focus 4. I will say, before we move on to Focus 4, your Focus 3 was really interesting. You said there was a lot of foliage. I know southern Lebanon has a lot of foliage. So that was something that sort of checked out with verifiable data. Focus 4 basically being a scene in Israel that you said there was evidence of rebuilding as well that went along with this destruction. So it's definitely, from your session, Israel does have urban areas that also experience destruction, but you described this as not as intense of a destruction as what you saw in Focus 3. And then we have Focus 5, which was the scene in Lebanon, which would best describe the final outcome of the Israeli war against Hezbollah, which also shows shows these urban areas where some parts of the urban area seem to be quite dilapidated and damaged and stuff, but there seems like that's not all of it. So it's not, it seems like from your session data, it's not like all of the big cities in Lebanon would be leveled to the same way that Gaza was leveled in the southern area of the Levant. So
Wow.
yeah, that was a great
War.
session though.
So what's this technology 2 again?
Technology 2, that was basically... so Technology 2 was the first technology that we looked at, and that was the most advanced weaponry that Israel will use in the upcoming war with Hezbollah. Focus 2, which would be Technology 1, I know we did a bit of a crisscross there, but Focus 2 being Technology 1, that is the most advanced weaponry that Israel possesses of any type.
See. Okay.
So we basically have just said that maybe they won't be using those insect drones to the same extent that they're probably going to use these energetic disruptor bombing attacks that seem to be what you described in Focus 1.
Oh man, well this is all grim.
Very grim.
We've just accepted that we're walking into war, huh? Here we go.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, pretty grim. However, if we just focus on the remote viewing, you got all of this data that fits exactly with the target rubric by using coordinates 86351039, and you got a lot of verifiable data that fit in a framework that is great to see from a blind perspective. So good remote viewing. So yeah.
Thanks. Okay. Well,
Any questions or comments?
no, not really. Just
No
gonna
worries.
hope the civilians don't get hurt.
Yeah, no, it would be better if none of this happened and nobody went to war at all, period. So That would be the ideal reaction. But it's this is the data we got for the remote viewing session, though. So I will say, in terms of just the accuracy of what we can verify in terms of environment and stuff like that, and these places being a sort of I guess mildly coastal in nature, and you having a lot of good descriptions of the levels of foliage in areas that are verifiably heavy foliage areas, like the south of Lebanon is a very dense foliage place. You did a great job. It was a great session. So, good remote viewing. Depressing data, but
Yep.
great job. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Aziz.
No problem. All right. Well, thank you very much, Intysam, and thank you everyone else for watching.